My name is Dana Monroe. I'm 34, a former Army medical officer, honorably discharged on a hardship separation when my son's health went south. I rent a small 2-bedroom in Fort Collins, Colorado, because it's close to the middle school where I teach and not far from the children's hospital. It isn't fancy. It's clean, quiet, and the water heater minds its business, which already puts it ahead of most things in my life that year. My son, Noah, is 7. He likes science kits, microwave popcorn, and the inflatable dinosaurs outside hardware stores. He also has a congenital heart defect that finally outpaced meds and routine procedures. In the Army, I learned to read charts and deliver bad news without shaking. It's different when the chart has your kid's name on it. The cardiologist was straight with me. Dana, there's a surgical option. High success rate, not experimental, but it's specialized and out of network for your plan. Estimated total, $65,000. He didn't blink when he said it. He's said it before. He added the part all doctors add, sooner is better. I ask the questions anyone asks. Payment plan? Grants? Hospital charity? We went through the list. He knew I'd already knocked on those doors. Some had cracks of light. None opened wide enough to roll a kid's bed through. I went home, made mac and cheese, and watched Noah build a Lego parking lot for toy ambulances. He narrated the siren noises. He told me I should be the boss doctor again. I said I'd think about it. After he fell asleep, I did what I'd been avoiding. I opened my spreadsheet, paid time off left, savings, retirement penalty if I crack into it, what I could sell, who still answers my calls. It didn't add up to 65. It didn't add up to half. People love to say, ask your family. So I did. My parents, Gregory and Ellen, live in a gated community outside Denver. They own what used to be a strong regional construction firm, Monroe Developments. Big houses, custom kitchens, that crowd. Their yard looks like a magazine cover. The cleaning service probably has a cleaning service. I called, said I needed to talk. My mother put me on speaker before I got through hello. My father said they had a tasting later and could I be quick. I said I'd drive down. He sighed, like gasoline prices were my fault. The house was staged like an open house, even though no one was buying it. My sister's latest portrait with Derek sat on the entry table in a gold frame you could trade for a used car. Sophie Monroe, 28, influencer, brand partnerships, knows how to angle her chin 2 degrees to the left and call it a job. She's getting serious with Derek West, who runs something in tech, which means no one knows what he does and he makes too much money doing it. My mother hugged me like perfume is affection. You look tired, she said, as if that was a helpful diagnosis. We sat in the living room. The couch tried to eat me. My father didn't sit. He prefers to address the room like he's at a board meeting. I took a breath. Noah needs a surgery. It's out of network. The total is about $65,000. I've talked to the hospital. I'm not here because I didn't try other options. I'm here because we're out of time. My mother looked at my father. He looked at me the way he looks at a bid he won't touch because the margins are thin. Dana, he said, we've helped a lot over the years. We covered deductibles for the last 2 procedures. We gave you the down payment when you moved back. At some point, you need to be realistic. This is realistic, I said. A specific procedure with a number and a window. I'm not asking for a miracle. I'm asking for a loan. I'll pay you back every month. Put interest on it if you want. Put a lien on my car. Put a lien on my spine. My mother touched his sleeve. That's her way of agreeing without risking words. Honey, she said to me, insurance should cover this. Have you called again? Sometimes they make exceptions. They didn't, I said. I asked 3 managers and a person whose job title is literally exceptions. The exception was no. Aston. My father finally sat, knees apart, hands steepled, the posture of a man pretending the moral high ground is as stable as a poured slab. We can't drain retirement. We're older now. We need security. And we've made commitments. There it was. The word. Commitments. To Sophie's wedding, I said, because pretending wasn't going to make the math softer. My mother's smile held. It's not just a party. It's a celebration of a family coming together. Which family? I asked, because the one I'm in could use a little coming together at the hospital. That's not fair, my father said. You can't compare expenses like that. That's exactly what expenses are for, I said, comparing. He reached for numbers like he was grabbing a coat. A venue deposit is a deposit. You don't get that back. The band is contracted. Flights are booked. So there is money, I said. It's just busy. My mother exhaled through her nose. She does that when she thinks the other person is being emotional instead of correct. Dana, it's Sophie's only wedding. I stared at them. It's Noah's only heart. We sat a long second in the kind of silence that makes you hear the ice maker. My father stood back up, which is how he ends things. We can't do 65. We can refer you to a financial advisor. There are medical loans. I've talked to them, I said. They love me for 30% April. We're being prudent, he said. You were taught prudence. Army values, right? Duty. Selfless service. Selfless service is literally what I did, I said, and swallowed whatever came next because it wasn't going to help. He spread his hands. We're not made of money. That was rich, but only in one way. My mother pivoted, because she hates scenes. Stay for dinner. Sophie and Derek are stopping by after the tasting. You can congratulate them on the venue. It's Napa Valley. Very tasteful. I dacked. Thanks, but I have to get back, I said. Noah has a PT appointment in the morning. It was true. It was also a sentence shaped like an exit. At the door, my mother hugged me again, thinner this time. We'll pray, she said. Great, I said. Ask for network coverage. Driving back up I-25, I counted exits and reasons not to scream. I pulled into my lot, carried in a grocery sack with chicken, apples, and the kind of yogurt kids pretend to like once. Noah was on the rug with crayons and a picture of a rocket. He asked if rockets are loud in person. I said yes, louder than your grandpa's opinions. He laughed because he likes jokes where I get away with it. After he was asleep, I sent 3 emails. One to the cardiologist confirming we were still in the window, one to the hospital billing office asking to reopen the charity case with new documentation, and one to my old first sergeant asking if any veterans organizations still offered bridge grants for medical crises. I do not enjoy asking for help. The Army trains that out of you and motherhood never trains it in, at least not for me. I did it anyway. At 10:30, my phone buzzed. It was Sophie. I let it ring out, because I still have self-control when the sun's down. She texted instead, a photo of a terrace at a vineyard, all string lights and rented joy. Can't wait to celebrate, she wrote, like we'd been talking. I typed and deleted 3 responses. I put the phone face down. I opened the cabinet where my metal boxes live because I never figured out where else to put them. Bronze Star, Army Commendation, a shadow of a life where people said thank you when I helped them breathe. I closed the cabinet. The cabinet didn't argue. The next morning, Noah woke up pale and chatty. That's his tell. When he's scared, he talks. If I have surgery, can I get a popsicle after? He asked in the car, eyes big behind smudged glasses. You can get 2, I said. Different colors. At the same time? He asked. We'll test the limits of medical science, I said. He grinned. I tried not to look like I was negotiating with the universe about fruit ice. The physical therapist gave him a sticker and me a look I know too well. The look you give a parent you wish you could hand money to. I said thank you and meant it. I stopped by the school on the way home to switch a shift so I could make the next consult. My supervisor said yes. She has a kid. We trade favors like coffee. Back home, I made grilled cheese and called the hospital again. I asked for a supervisor's supervisor. I told the story without crying. It's a skill. They promised to escalate the file, which is a word that means nothing until it does. I hung up and opened my spreadsheet again. I added a new tab for things to sell. Most of it wouldn't move the needle. Some things would hurt. I'm not sentimental, but I'm not stone. At 3, Noah napped, sun slanting in across the cheap rug we both pretend is soft. I wrote a list on a legal pad because screens feel like wishes and paper feels like orders. On it, call TRICARE again. Check state assistance. Ask the cardiologist for a letter. Ask my old CO for a reference. Copy tax returns. Stop saying sorry when I ask for help. I circled the last one. My phone buzzed with an email from hospital billing. Received. Reviewing. No emoji, no promise, just words. Fine, I can work with words. I poured coffee I didn't need, and stood at the sink long enough to look like I was thinking about nothing. Outside, a neighbor wrestled a stroller into a trunk. Across the way, a college kid in a hoodie carried a laundry basket like it was full of bricks. Life kept doing laps. I made another list. Then I made another call. Then I printed forms. Then I checked on Noah and moved his blanket half an inch because that's the kind of control you get when you don't have much. The apartment stayed quiet, the way small places do when everything important in them is asleep. The next morning I woke up to the sound of Noah coughing and the smell of burnt toast. I didn't even own a toaster that good at burning things, so I knew it was my neighbor again, cooking like the smoke alarm was a timer. I checked Noah's oxygen, then sat beside his bed. His breathing was shallow but steady. The sound of it used to comfort me. Now it reminded me of a countdown. I brewed coffee that tasted like punishment and opened my laptop. The crowdfunding page I'd started the night before had 6 donations. 2 from coworkers, 1 from a stranger with a cartoon profile picture, and 1 from my old sergeant with the note, "Hang in there, Doc." $12,000 total. I was grateful, but it wasn't even close. I'd hit refresh 3 times like the number might change out of pity. At 9, my phone rang. Sophie. I answered this time because I still believed family was supposed to mean something. Her voice was bubbly, breathless. "Dana, you won't believe it," Derek proposed. "We're engaged." End taken. I looked at the hospital forms spread across my kitchen table. "That's great, Soph." "I know, right? And Mom and Dad are so generous. They said there's no budget limit. We're doing it big destination wedding, maybe Italy or Napa. Oh my God, can you imagine the photos?" I could imagine them perfectly. Golden hour vineyards, rented happiness, my parents beaming while I begged loan officers to call me back. "Sounds nice," I said. "It's going to be magical," she went on. "They said I deserved the best day of my life." The word deserve stuck like a bone in my throat. "Must be nice to deserve things," I said. She either didn't hear it or didn't care. "Anyway, you'll be a bridesmaid, of course. Mom said the dresses are like $300 each, but they're gorgeous navy silk, super flattering." I stared at the bills in front of me. $300. That was almost 2 weeks of Noah's meds. "I'll think about it," I said. "Don't take too long," she said cheerfully. The designers booked months ahead. After she hung up, I sat in silence. My apartment was so quiet I could hear the hum of the oxygen machine through the wall. I scrolled through her Instagram out of morbid curiosity. She'd already posted a photo of the ring with the caption, "Forever starts now." There were comments from my parents, heart emojis, champagne glasses, proud, dad quotes. I closed the app. I didn't trust myself not to throw the phone. By the end of the week, Sophie's wedding plans had their own group chat, email chain, and Pinterest board. My parents were sending updates like a PR team, tasting menus, vineyard tours, custom invitations. Every message came with a new $sign attached. I stopped opening them. I didn't need reminders of what their priorities looked like with numbers attached. Instead, I called the hospital again. They said the charity board had reviewed my application and, unfortunately, couldn't accommodate it this quarter. I didn't ask which quarter my son was supposed to live until I sold my car, bought a 15-year-old sedan that rattled like it was laughing at me. I sold my wedding ring, not that it meant anything since Noah's father had left when he got sick. The pawnshop guy tried to lowball me. I told him I'd stitched up men in worse condition for less. He paid full price. I kept teaching at the middle school, trying to act normal in front of kids who complained about cafeteria pizza while my kid couldn't chew without pain. I stayed late most nights grading papers because it was easier than going home to a house that smelled like hospital sanitizer. 2 months later, my parents invited me to dinner. To catch up, Mom said. Against my better judgment, I went. Their house looked even bigger than before, maybe because my world had shrunk. The table was set like a magazine ad. Sophie was there, glowing. "Dana, you're going to love this. We booked the venue. It's in Napa Valley. Do you know what they charge per head? You'd die." "Let's hope not," I said before I could stop myself. She laughed like it was a joke. My father didn't. "That's not funny," he said. "No," I said. "It isn't." Mom changed the subject to wine pairings. They talked for an hour about linens, photographers, and floral imports. I didn't say much. I was too busy mentally converting every price they mentioned into how many doses of medication it could buy. When dinner ended, my father patted my shoulder and said, "We're so proud of you for handling things on your own. You've really grown up." I smiled tightly. Yeah, I didn't have much choice. On the drive home, I realized I'd stopped crying about it. The pain had calcified into something sharper. Not rage, exactly more like focus. The kind you get before a mission. Weeks passed. Noah's condition got worse. The cardiologist's voice grew quieter every time we met, like he was trying not to wake bad news. I maxed out another credit card, started tutoring at night. I learned which payday lenders wouldn't call it work. By July, Noah couldn't walk more than a few steps without gasping. He still smiled, though, still asked if I'd let him have soda, after the big fix. I told him sure, a whole can. He said, "I'll share it with you, Mommy." How? Then one night I got a call from my mother. "Honey, we need to talk about the bridesmaid dresses." "What about them?" "They're $300 each, and Sophie needs everyone to order soon. You've been avoiding her texts." "I can't afford that right now." Pause, then the voice sweet, rehearsed. "Dana, this is your sister's wedding. You always make everything about money." I bit down on my tongue. "Money seems to be what everything's about these days." She sighed. "We all have burdens, dear. Life goes on. You can't stay stuck in crisis mode forever." "Tell that to Noah's heart," I said. "Don't be dramatic," she snapped, the mask slipping. "You're not the only one with problems." When I hung up, I didn't cry. I laughed. The kind of laugh that makes people step back because they don't know if you're kidding. By August, Noah was in and out of the hospital. I took unpaid leave. My boss at the school told me to take all the time you need, which is kind when you can afford it. I couldn't. Bills piled up faster than sympathy cards. In September, I got another call from my mother again, excited. "We just had Sophie's bachelorette weekend. It was magical. Napa Valley is perfect. You should see the villa, they had a private chef." "How much did it cost?" I asked before I could stop myself. "Oh, I don't know exactly," she said, like people accidentally drop 5 figures sometimes. "Maybe 10,000? Worth every penny to see Sophie so happy." 10,000. More than a tenth of what could save my son. I said, "That's wonderful," because the alternative was screaming. "You should be more supportive," she said. "Sophie feels like you're distant lately." "I'll work on that," I said. "Maybe after my kid stops dying." She gasped. "Dana, that's an awful thing to say." R8. "You're right," I said. "It's worse to live it." I ended the call. The room stayed quiet except for the steady hiss of Noah's oxygen machine. I sat beside him, watched his chest rise and fall, uneven but stubborn. He looked peaceful in sleep. Kids are good at not knowing they've been failed. Outside, the streetlights came on one by one. Somewhere, someone was probably picking centerpieces or tasting cake. I poured myself coffee gone cold and stared at the glow from the machine keeping my son alive. My parents once told me they were proud that I'd served my country, that I knew how to stay strong under pressure. They had no idea what strength actually costs. The hospital room smelled like lemon disinfectant and electricity. Machines beeped in rhythm, like they were arguing with each other. Noah's small hand rested in mine, pale but warm. He was too weak to talk much now, though he tried. "Mom," he whispered, "when I get better, can we go to the beach again?" "Of course," I said, though the word felt like lying to God. "We'll build the biggest sandcastle anyone's ever seen." He smiled, slow and crooked, like it took work. Then he closed his eyes and drifted back into the uneasy half-sleep that had become his norm. I brushed his hair away from his forehead, the same way I'd done when he was a baby, back before I knew hospitals by floor plan. Dr. Reeves came in around noon. She looked tired, too. Everyone here did. "Dana," she said softly, "the medication isn't holding. His heart's failing faster than expected." "How long?" I asked. My voice was steady. "Years of military discipline can keep your face straight while your world burns." "A few weeks, maybe." "I'm sorry." "Don't be sorry," I said. "Just tell me what to do." "There's nothing more we can do," she said. "We can keep him comfortable." Comfortable. The medical word for waiting. When she left, I sat there and listened to the air hiss through the oxygen line. I thought about the word comfortable again. I thought about my parents' house in Denver, the marble counters and imported rugs. Comfortable. That word fit them better. I called my mother that night because apparently I hadn't learned. "He's dying," I said. "It's happening faster now." "Oh, Dana," she said, voice trembling just enough to sound expensive. "We'll pray. Have you talked to the doctors about hospice?" "He's 7, I said. "Hospice is for people who had a chance." She sighed. "You have to accept what you can't change. It's God's will." "No," I said. "It's your will." And I hung up. I stopped answering after that. They still sent texts, wedding updates, mostly. The rehearsal dinner menu. The wine list. Sophie's bridal gown fittings. The messages kept coming like spam you can't block because it shares your DNA. 2 days later, the hospital called while I was teaching a summer session. Noah had coded. I made it there in 12 minutes. They stabilized him, but he was weaker. The doctor looked at me and didn't need to say the words. I knew the tone. I'd used it before when telling families their soldiers weren't coming home. That night, I made a decision. I didn't tell anyone, but I stopped fighting the bills, the phone calls, the endless administrative hell. I sat by my son's bed and promised him he wouldn't be alone. I'd stay until the very end. I wasn't going to waste another second begging people who didn't deserve to be asked. Sophie called the next day. "Mom said you've been distant," she said. "I know things are hard, but this is supposed to be the happiest time of our lives." "Ours?" I asked. "Well, I mean, the family's. You'll feel better once the wedding's over. You'll see." "You're right," I said quietly. "I will." 1. She took it as agreement. The following week blurred together. Alarms, nurses, coffee, prayer from people who didn't know how prayer works. One night, Noah woke up scared. "Mom," he whispered, "am I dying?" I froze. My instinct was to deny it, to protect him from everything, even the truth. But I'd promised myself no more lies, no more pretending. "Yeah, baby," I said. "You're really sick, but I'm right here." He looked at me a long time, like he was studying me. "It's okay," he said finally. "You're brave." No one had ever said that to me when it mattered. The next morning, he was gone for a few minutes. Vitals dropped, code called, team rushed in. They brought him back. I didn't know whether to thank them or curse them. His body was fighting, but it wasn't a war he could win. By Friday, I stopped going home. The nurses brought me blankets and bad coffee. I sat beside him, reading from his favorite book about space. "You'd like Mars," I told him. "No mosquitos." He smiled weakly. "Can we go there?" "Someday," I said. "You'll lead the mission." He drifted off again. The nurse adjusted the monitors, her hand light on my shoulder. "You should rest, Dana," she said. "I'm resting," I said. "This is resting." That weekend, my parents visited. My father stood at the foot of the bed like he was waiting for a sales pitch. My mother dabbed her eyes with a tissue she'd probably ironed. They stayed 15 minutes. When they left, she said, "We'll stop by again after the florist meeting." The florist meeting. I didn't even have the energy to hate them anymore. Monday. Noah slipped away at dawn. No drama, no alarms, just stopped breathing, like his body had finally clocked out. I sat there with him for a long time because I didn't know what else to do. The nurse came in and touched my shoulder again. "He's gone," she said. "I know," I said. I called my mother. "He's gone," I told her. "Oh, Dana," she said. "Oh no. What terrible timing." Timing. That was the word she chose. Because the funeral would interfere with the wedding schedule. I didn't cry. I didn't scream. I just said, "Yeah, terrible," and hung up. The funeral home smelled like lilies and decisions I didn't want to make. The director talked about packages and urn options like he was selling vacation plans. I picked the cheapest casket. My principal loaned me the money. He didn't ask for it back. When I called to give my parents the date Friday, 2 days before Sophie's wedding, my mother hesitated. "Friday's tricky," she said. "We have the rehearsal dinner. Could you move it to Thursday? You want me to reschedule my son's funeral so you don't miss a dinner?" "It's not just dinner, Dana. There are speeches, out-of-town guests. Everything's already arranged." I looked at the wall. "You're right. Heaven forbid the salmon get cold." She said, "Don't be cruel." "Cruel?" I said. You spent $320,000 to celebrate while your grandson died because you wouldn't spend $65,000 to save him. You don't get to say cruel." She hung up crying. I didn't care. Friday came. The funeral was small, 20 people, most of them co-workers and a few of my old army friends. My Aunt Alice was there, the only relative who sent money when I asked. My parents arrived 40 minutes late. My mother wore beige. My father checked his watch twice. They left before the reception, saying they had somewhere to be. After everyone left, I sat on the folding chair by the grave until the caretaker started stacking them up. The air was cold, and the sky had that color between gray and blue that never makes up its mind. I told Noah I was sorry. Not because I failed I'd done everything I could, but because the people who were supposed to love him didn't even try. That night, I came home to an empty apartment. The oxygen machine sat silent. The toys were still in their places, like he might walk back in and keep playing. I poured myself a drink I didn't finish. Then I opened a notebook and started writing everything down: dates, amounts, conversations. Not out of rage, out of habit. The Army teaches you to document everything. When I was done, I closed the notebook and stared at the wall. Somewhere across the state, my family was raising glasses and taking pictures under chandeliers. My father would give a toast about family values. My mother would cry at the vows. Sophie would dance in her designer gown. I sat in the dark and whispered, "Enjoy it." Then I turned off the light, because I didn't need to see what I already knew. The next morning I got up at 6 out of habit. The apartment was quiet, but my body still thought it had orders to follow. I made coffee, poured 2 cups, and stared at the second one until it went cold. Then I poured it down the drain and got dressed for work. The school had saved my position. My principal, Mr. Herrera, told me to take another month if I needed it. I told him I needed structure, not sympathy. He didn't argue. Classrooms have a smell, markers, paper, a little sweat, a hint of something human. That first week back, I stood in front of 30 middle schoolers and tried to explain how atoms work while my own world had already split apart. Kids stared at me with the same awkward pity adults give at funerals. I kept my face calm. Soldiers learn to do that. After work, I went home to the same 4 walls and the silence that came with them. I packed Noah's things into boxes, labeled them by category, and stacked them in the closet. I told myself I was organizing. In reality, I was making the world smaller. My parents called twice in 6 months. Both times it was checking in. My mother talked about Sophie's honeymoon in the Maldives, the new house they'd bought in Napa, and how grandbaby Sophia is due in June. She called her our first grandchild. I hung up and stared at my phone for a long time. I scrolled through Facebook later and found the post. My mother had written, "Our hearts are full, our first grandchild on the way." There was no mention of Noah. No photo, no memory, nothing. Just erased. I took a screenshot and saved it in a folder labeled Operation Ledger. I didn't know why I called it that at first. Maybe it was instinct. Maybe it was the military training document everything, even if the mission isn't clear yet. Every year after that, I added to the file. Emails, text messages, news clippings about my parents' company, photos from Sophie's social media. I didn't stalk them. I observed. Like reconnaissance. In 2019, Monroe Developments got a contract for a government project. My father was quoted in the paper talking about integrity and family values. I printed it, highlighted those words, and added it to the ledger. Meanwhile, I worked. I took night classes to finish my master's degree in education leadership. The school helped cover part of the tuition. I studied between classes and dinner, between loneliness and the small noise of the TV I left on to keep the silence from winning. 3 years after Noah died, I got promoted to assistant principal. The pay wasn't great, but it was progress. I bought a used Jeep that didn't stall in the snow. I joined a veterans support group, mostly guys who missed the order and noise of deployment. They didn't talk about feelings, but they showed up when you needed a couch moved or a beer shared. That's close enough. One night after the meeting, I sat with one of the guys, Sergeant Leah Collins, who used to serve in field logistics. She asked why I'd been keeping to myself. I told her a little enough to get the shape of it out without bleeding all over the table. She didn't say much, just nodded. "You ever gonna talk to them again?" she asked. "No," I said. "Good," she said. Some people earn distance. We clinked bottles. And that was that. By the time Sophie's second child was born, I'd stopped checking their posts on purpose. I didn't need to. My mother still sent holiday cards with family photos. I kept them all, tucked into the back of the ledger. In one, my father was holding a baby boy with the caption, "Our little miracle, Jackson." That was the same caption I'd once used for Noah's first birthday. They'd stolen even that. I started a small charity fund in Noah's name, the Noah Monroe Honor Fund. It was simple. Just me and a few fellow veterans raising money for kids of service members with serious illnesses. We didn't raise much, but every dollar we gave out felt like pushing back against something ugly. By the 4th year, I had enough savings to breathe again. I wasn't rich, but I wasn't drowning. Every month, I transferred a set amount into a separate account. It was labeled Future Operations. I didn't tell anyone what it was for. My parents still sent birthday cards, unsigned except for love, Mom and Dad. My father once called about a tax question, pretending to care. I hung up halfway through his sentence. The hardest part wasn't the anger, it was the calm. The silence. The way grief stopped screaming and started whispering. Some nights, I'd find myself sitting on the floor by the closet, opening the box that held Noah's things. His sneakers, his dinosaur pajamas, the drawing he made of the two of us under a crooked Sunday. I'd touch the paper and imagine his little hand pressing the crayon. Then I'd put it back and close the lid before I forgot to breathe. That was my life for a while. Work, routine, quiet vengeance growing roots. I told myself it wasn't revenge. It was record-keeping. Justice doesn't always come with sirens, it comes with documentation. One spring afternoon, I came home from work and saw an envelope on my doorstep. No return address, just my name. Inside was a handwritten note from Aunt Alice, the only person who'd shown up when it mattered. "Dana, I thought you should know Gregory's company is in trouble. There's talk of a fraud investigation. Stocks are crashing. Your parents haven't said anything publicly, but it sounds bad. Please don't tell them I told you." I read it twice. Then I smiled. Not because I was happy, but because it felt like gravity had shifted an inch in my favor. That night, I looked up the news myself. Monroe Developments had been caught in a government contract scandal. A supplier faked invoices, and the investigation named several executives. My father wasn't charged, but his name was all over the articles. The company's stock plummeted, the board resigned, and retirement accounts vanished. I closed the laptop and leaned back. For the first time in years, I exhaled without clenching my jaw. It wasn't joy, it was recognition, like the universe had finally checked its notes. 2 weeks later, I got a voicemail from my mother. "Dana, please call us. It's important." Her voice was smaller than I remembered, thinner. I didn't call back. Then another message. "Your father lost his job. We're struggling. The bank's threatening foreclosure." Struggling. That word had never sounded so poetic. I let it go another week. Then another. I checked the county foreclosure listings out of curiosity. Their house was on the list auction scheduled in 45 days. I didn't celebrate. I didn't tell anyone. I just watched the listing number like I used to watch heart monitors. The following Monday, I came home to find someone standing at my door. Gray hair, worn suit, face I'd memorized in both love and resentment. My father. He looked smaller than before. Not physically, just reduced. I didn't open the door fully, just the width of the chain. "What do you want?" "Dana," he said, voice cracking. "Please, we need to talk." "About what?" He swallowed hard. "We're losing everything. The house, the savings, your mother's not well. We need help." Help, I repeated. Interesting word. I remember using it once. He looked down. "We were wrong, but we're family. Family helps each other." I almost laughed. "Family helps each other. That's a good one." He said, "Can I come in?" "No," I said, "but I'll think about it." I closed the door before he could answer. For the first time in 4 years, I slept through the night. The first time I saw my father cry, he was sitting in a borrowed Toyota outside my apartment building. It was raining, not dramatically, just enough to make everything look honest. He rolled the window down halfway. "Your mother's inside the car," he said. "She didn't want to come up." "She never does," I said. He exhaled through his nose, the way he used to when I'd talk back as a kid. Then he handed me a folded letter. They froze our accounts. The company's gone. They're investigating me. We might lose the house. End quote. I glanced at the paper, not because I cared about what it said, but because I liked seeing his signature under something he couldn't control. So? I said. So, I thought you should know, he said. You're still our daughter. I looked at him like I was trying to remember what that meant. Am I? Or am I just a loose end in your PR nightmare? He didn't answer. He never had the stomach for silence unless he was the one creating it. Your mother hasn't been well, he said finally. She's been taking it hard. I'm sure, I said. Nothing says emotional strain like losing your wine budget. Don't be cruel, he said automatically out of habit, like that word still had authority. Then don't be here, I said, and closed the door before he could reply. They didn't call again for 2 weeks. I saw their faces online before I heard their voices. Local news, business section. The anchor's tone was polite, almost pitying. Gregory and Ellen Monroe, founders of Monroe Developments, face civil suits following allegations of accounting fraud and misuse of public funds. The clip showed their house, the same one where I'd begged them for $65,000, now surrounded by news vans. I muted the TV and watched in silence. The camera caught my father's face as he told reporters, "It's all a misunderstanding." It wasn't. I made dinner that night, just pasta and canned sauce, and turned off my phone. The next morning, there was a message from Aunt Alice. "They're losing everything, honey. Try to be kind." I stared at it until it stopped meaning anything. Then I deleted it. At work, Leah noticed something was off. "You look like someone just told you the apocalypse got delayed," she said over coffee. "It's more like it finally showed up at the right address," I said. She nodded slowly. "You okay?" "Yeah," I said. "I'm just trying to decide if justice should have interest." She grinned. That's the most Dana sentence I've ever heard. The truth was, I didn't feel satisfied. Not yet. The news didn't fix anything. It didn't bring back my son or erase the years they spent pretending he didn't exist. It just leveled the ground. Still, something in me started to breathe again. The constant tightness behind my ribs loosened a little. For the first time in a long time, I didn't feel like I was the one underwater. Weeks passed, and their situation got worse. The company filed bankruptcy. Their country club membership was revoked apparently. Even rich people have their own version of exile. My mother's social circle evaporated overnight. I know because she called me again, her voice small. "Dana, please pick up," she said on voicemail. "We need your help. The house, we might lose it. We just need to get through this month." I played it twice, then I forwarded it to my email and saved it in the Operation Ledger folder. That evening, I sat in my kitchen with the lights off, the glow from my laptop lighting the stack of papers in front of me. Mortgage records, foreclosure notices, news updates. I didn't plan to use them for anything. Not yet. I just liked having the facts. Truth is a better weapon when it's clean. 2 days later, they showed up again. Both of them this time. My mother looked thinner, makeup cracking around her eyes like old paint. My father looked like he hadn't slept. He stood straighter, though still trying to command the room. I opened the door just enough. "You've got 3 minutes." My mother started crying before she spoke. "We're losing everything," she said. "We don't have anywhere to go. The retirement money's gone. We've tried everything." "Everything?" I asked. "Everything but empathy?" "Please, Dana," she said. "Don't make this harder than it already is." I laughed, low and dry. "You think I'm making your life harder? That's adorable." My father stepped in. "We're not here for charity. We're asking for a loan. $90,000. Enough to keep the house until we sell it." I leaned against the doorframe. "A loan? Like the one I asked for 4 years ago?" He shifted, uncomfortable. "This is different." "You're right," I said. "Because the person dying then wasn't you." He said nothing. My mother sobbed quietly. "Dana, please. We've learned our lesson. We know we were wrong. We can't fix the past, but we're family." "Family," I repeated. "That word keeps coming up. You used it like a prop back then, too." She reached out, but I stepped back. "We made a mistake," she said. "We thought we were doing what's best at the time." "What's best?" I said, my voice tightening. You mean for your image, for Sophie's photos, for the champagne bill? You didn't do what was best, you did what was convenient. My father started to say something, but I cut him off. You know what's funny? You spent $320,000 to throw a wedding for a daughter who divorced the guy a year later. And you couldn't spare $65,000 to save your grandson. You call that investment strategy? He flinched. My mother whispered. We didn't know how bad it was. You knew enough, I said. You just didn't care. They stood there in silence, soaked in shame, or maybe just rain. I couldn't tell which. Finally, my father said quietly, We don't have anyone else. That's because you built a kingdom out of people who liked your parties, not your character. He nodded, almost accepting it. I understand if you can't forgive us. I don't forgive, I said. I outlive. He swallowed. Will you at least think about helping? Sure, I said. I'll think about it. They looked hopeful. I let them. Then I closed the door. That night I sat at my desk, opened the ledger, and added a new entry. October 18th, 2023. Parents requested $90,000 to prevent foreclosure. Claimed remorse. Observed lack of genuine accountability. I stared at the line for a while, then typed one more sentence beneath it. Action. Pending review. It wasn't rage that filled me, it was clarity. I realized then that revenge didn't need to be loud. It could wear a calm face, carry a neat signature, and arrive right on time. The next morning, I made myself a full breakfast for the first time in months, eggs, toast, even real butter. Outside, the world looked almost clean. My phone buzzed with another message from my father. Please, Dana, just meet with us. We'll explain everything. I didn't answer right away. I just looked out the window at the steady drizzle and thought about how much I used to beg for mercy from people who didn't deserve it. Now, they were the ones begging, and mercy wasn't on my schedule. When I finally decided to answer the phone, it wasn't out of pity, it was out of curiosity. I wanted to hear what they sounded like stripped of pride. My father's voice cracked halfway through hello. He asked if they could come by to explain. I said, Saturday, 2 o'clock, 15 minutes. Then I hung up. I spent the next few days preparing like it was a mission briefing. Not because I planned to attack them, but because I wasn't going to let chaos walk through my door again without a plan. I set up my dining table with a folder labeled Operation Ledger. Inside, printed bank records, screenshots, text messages, the photo of Sophie's wedding cake that cost more than Noah's surgery. Each page had dates, annotations, context. Years of documentation distilled into proof that I hadn't imagined any of it. Leah stopped by Friday night to drop off a portable recorder. Just in case, she said. You know, for accountability. I smirked. You mean entertainment? She shrugged. Both can be true. I told her I wasn't planning to yell. I just want them to say it out loud. Leah nodded. Closure doesn't always need fireworks. Sometimes it just needs witnesses. Saturday came. I woke early, made coffee, ran through the checklist in my head like pre-mission prep. No emotions on display, no unnecessary words, no alcohol in sight. I wore my uniform jacket, not the full set, just enough to remind everyone who I'd become without their help. The medals stayed in the drawer. This wasn't about showing off. It was about authority. At 1:55, I saw their car pull in through the blinds. The same silver Lexus from the days when appearances were their religion. It was dented now, like time had finally stopped taking bribes. They sat in the driveway longer than necessary, maybe arguing about what to say, maybe just collecting courage they'd never had to use before. When I opened the door, I didn't smile. You're early, I said. My father looked smaller up close. His suit was clean but cheap, collar wilted. My mother wore a beige coat that might have been expensive once. Her hands trembled when she held her purse. Can we come in? She asked. You already are, I said, stepping aside. They sat at the dining table while I stayed standing for a moment, watching how uncomfortable they looked surrounded by simplicity. The apartment wasn't fancy, but it was honest. No pretense, no art meant to impress guests who never came. My father glanced at the folder on the table. You've been keeping records? Of course, I said. Someone in this family had to. He nodded slowly, as if he understood that wasn't an exaggeration. My mother tried a polite smile, the same one she used on reporters back when they were still the Monroes. "I know you don't owe us anything," she said, "but we've run out of options. We're behind on the mortgage, and the bank won't extend us again. The foreclosure notice came last week. Do you still have the vineyard shares?" I asked. She blinked. "What?" "The Napa vineyard. You bragged about investing after the wedding. Sold them yet?" She flushed, eyes darting to my father. "That's complicated. Everything with you is complicated," I said, sitting down. "Except math. Math is simple. You had money for a 6-figure wedding? You didn't have $65,000 for my son, now you need $90,000 from me? Funny symmetry." My father interjected, trying to regain control. "We're not asking for a handout. We'll sign whatever contract you need. We just need to stay in the house until things stabilize. The market will turn around." The market isn't your problem," I said. "Morality is." He shifted in his chair, pretending not to understand. "Dana, we've all made mistakes. We've all suffered losses." "No," I said quietly. "You haven't." My mother started crying softly, the kind of crying meant to soften people, not to release anything real. "We've paid the price," she whispered. "We lost everything." I leaned forward, elbows on the table. "You lost things. I lost a child. There's a difference. End of sex." For a few seconds, the only sound was the faint hum of the fridge. Then my father said, "We can't change the past." I looked him straight in the eye. "You didn't even try when you could." He lowered his gaze. That was new. For once, he looked like a man who'd run out of scripts. My mother reached into her purse and pulled out an envelope. "We wrote a letter," she said. "An apology. I know it can't fix anything, but—" I stopped her. "Keep it. I don't need rehearsed remorse. That—" Tears streaked her foundation, turning it to mud. "Please, Dana," she said. "We can't do this without you." "That's true," I said. "You can't." She blinked, confused. "Then you'll help?" I didn't say that. I stood up and walked to the window. The rain had started again, steady and cold. I thought about Noah, how he'd once asked if clouds ever got tired. I used to tell him they didn't. Now I wasn't so sure. When I turned back, they were still waiting for mercy. "You know what I realized?" I said. "I spent years trying to earn your love, thinking there was a number big enough to buy it. Turns out love was just another one of your luxury items available until it got inconvenient." My father rubbed his temple. "We know we were wrong. If I could go back, I would." "But you can't," I said, finishing the sentence for him. "You made your choices, and now you get to live with them, like I did." He looked at me, jaw tight. "You're really not going to help?" "I didn't say that either," I said. "I said I'd think about it. But if I do anything, it'll be on my terms." "What does that mean?" my mother asked. "It means I decide what help looks like. I decide what justice feels like, and you don't get to negotiate the conditions." She whispered something I couldn't make out, maybe a prayer, maybe a curse. My father nodded like he'd expected this outcome but hoped for a different one anyway. I reached for the folder and opened it, pulling out the first page. "You remember this?" I said, showing them the photo from the wedding. Sophie laughing under string lights while they raised glasses. "This cost more than a human life. But don't worry, I kept the receipt." They stared at the picture, the same way people look at crime scene photos of themselves. "I'll contact you," I said, "when I decide." My father stood slowly. "We're not your enemies, Dana." "I mine." "You were never my enemies," I said. "You were just proof that not all enemies wear uniforms." He hesitated, then walked to the door. My mother lingered a second longer, hand on her purse like it was a shield. "I still love you," she whispered. I didn't respond. She waited for a heartbeat, then followed him out. When the door shut, I sat back down. The chair creaked under the quiet. I turned on the recorder Leah had given me and played it back. Every word, every pause, every tear, all cataloged. Then I slipped the SD card into an envelope and labeled it Evidence 6 Ampere's Verbal Admission. I poured myself another cup of coffee, still hot this time, and watched the rain trail down the window like handwriting. Some people call moments like this closure. But to me, it just felt like the calm before something deliberate. I spent the next 3 days deciding what justice should look like. It wasn't about money anymore. It never really had been. Money was just the easiest measure for people like my parents to understand. What I wanted was truth, plain and unvarnished. Not the polished version they posted online or recited at charity galas. The kind that sits in your throat and tastes like metal when you finally say it. Saturday came again. I cleared the table, set 3 glasses of water, and laid out the folder Operation Ledger in the middle like a piece of evidence in a court-martial. I invited Leah to sit in. She didn't ask why, she just said, "Copy that." I trusted her to keep her mouth shut and her mind sharp. At 1:59, the knock came. Same rhythm as before, 2 short, 1 long. My father's habit, like he wanted to prove he could still keep a schedule while his life fell apart. I opened the door and motioned them in. No greetings this time. "Sit," I said. They obeyed, quiet like students before a pop quiz. Leah sat near the window, notebook in hand. My father glanced at her. "Who's this?" "Observer," I said. "You're fine." He didn't look fine. My mother clasped her purse again, like if she let go, it might all disappear. I opened the folder. "Before we talk about your situation, I want to go over something. You see this file? It's the reason I don't lose sleep anymore." End of Trex. I pulled out the first page, a printout of the GoFundMe I'd created for Noah. The date stamped on top. "Remember this? The day I asked for help." My mother looked down. "Dana, we said we were sorry." "No, you said you were unfortunate," I corrected. "Sorry is what people say when they spill coffee. You made a decision." My father straightened his back, pretending to still have authority. "We made the best decision we could at the time." You mean the one where a 7-year-old's life was less urgent than imported lilies?" He winced but didn't argue. That silence was my opening. I slid the next paper across the table. Sophie's wedding invoice. $320,842.50. Itemized. Signed by my father. $320,000, I said. That's almost 5 times what Noah needed. 5 times. Tell me, was the band worth it? The cake? The drone photographer? My mother sniffed. It wasn't about the money. It was about family. I leaned forward. "Family? You buried your grandson the week you toasted your daughter's marriage. Don't talk to me about family." She began crying again, soft and practiced. Leah's pen didn't stop moving. "I kept records," I said, flipping another page. "Every message, every voicemail. Here's one. Terrible timing, Dana. That was your response when I called to tell you he died." My father closed his eyes. "Enough," he said quietly. "No," I said, "not yet." I slid over another page, a photo of their social media post. "Our first grandchild, Sophia, on the way. You erased him," I said. "He never existed to you. You replaced him with someone you could show off." Ellen's voice broke. "We were grieving too." "Grieving what?" I asked. "Your image?" She covered her face with both hands. My father sat still, staring at the invoices like they were war casualties. I opened the next section of the folder, recent photos of their foreclosure notice, their business scandal headlines, the letter from the bank. "Now we're here," I said. Tables turned. Funny how life balances the books eventually. My father swallowed. "We came to ask for help, not humiliation." "You already had my help," I said. "You just didn't value it when it mattered." Leah finally spoke. "Mr. and Mrs. Monroe," she said evenly, "Dana doesn't owe you anything, but she's giving you a chance to face what you did. Take it." My father looked between us, jaw tight. "What do you want from us?" "The truth," I said. "Not excuses, not prayers. I want to hear you say it." He hesitated then. "We chose wrong." "That's vague," I said. "Try again." He took a breath. "We chose Sophie's wedding over Noah's surgery." The room went still. Even the refrigerator seemed to pause its hum. My mother sobbed harder, but I didn't flinch. "Say it again," I said quietly. He looked at me, eyes red. "We spent money on a wedding when we could have saved your son." I nodded slowly. "There it is." Leah wrote something down without looking up. I reached into the folder and pulled out a checkbook. "Here's what's going to happen," I said. "I'll give you $90,000, but not as a gift, as a transaction. In exchange, you sign this document." I slid over 2 sheets of paper, already printed and notarized. The top read, "No contact agreement, permanent estrangement clause." My father skimmed it. "You're disowning us." "No," I said. "I'm setting boundaries. You wanted a business arrangement, this is it." Ellen wiped her face. Dana, this is cruel. No, I said. This is proportional. Leah handed them a pen. Neither of them reached for it. My father stared at the paper, then at me. You really won't forgive us? I met his gaze. Forgiveness is earned, not begged for on clearance. How fi? He looked to my mother. She nodded faintly, shoulders trembling. Together, they signed. The pen squeaked against the paper like it wanted to apologize too. When they finished, I took the pages, placed them in a new folder, and wrote the date on the corner. There, I said. Now we're even. Ellen spoke through tears. What do you get out of this, Dana? Peace, I said. The kind that doesn't depend on you. I stood up, walked to the kitchen, and poured each of them a glass of water. It was habit muscle memory from years of hosting people I didn't trust. Drink, I said. My father hesitated, then took a sip. My mother's hands shook too much to lift the glass. I didn't help her. Leah gathered her notes. That's all? She asked quietly. For now, I said. Gregory looked up. So we can stay in the house? I handed him the check. You can stay until you die, I said. Just don't send me the obituary notice. They stood, stunned. My mother whispered something like, thank you. But it didn't sound like gratitude, it sounded like defeat. As they walked out, my father turned once more. You're stronger than I ever realized, he said. I had to be, I replied. When the door closed behind them, Leah exhaled. That was brutal, she said. It was necessary, I said. She looked at the check stub. You actually gave them the money? I nodded. I wanted the confession more than the cash. I minnow. Leah leaned against the counter, watching me. You got it. Yeah, I said. But I'm not done yet. She didn't ask what that meant. She didn't have to. We both knew justice wasn't a single conversation. It was a chain reaction. I turned off the recorder, slid it into an envelope, and labeled it Evidence 7B, Verbal Confession. The folder closed with a satisfying snap. Then I looked out the window again. The rain had stopped. The sky was a dull gray, neither forgiving nor angry, just there. I sat back down at the table, staring at the checkbook, the signatures, the ledger, every piece of proof that the story had finally balanced itself. My hands were steady, my breathing even. For the first time in years, I felt in control of the narrative. The air in my apartment still smelled like their perfume and regret. After they left, I didn't move for a long time. The only sound was the ticking of the wall clock, each second reminding me that the words I'd waited 4 years to hear had finally been said out loud. We chose Sophie's wedding over Noah's life. It was out in the open now, stripped of excuses, small talk, and social polish. No one could ever take it back. Leah sat across from me quiet. You know, she said finally, if I didn't know you, I'd think that was the coldest thing I've ever seen. It wasn't cold, I said. It was clinical. Matt. She raised an eyebrow. You sound like you're writing a report. I am, I said, just not for them. I stood, gathered the signed pages, and slid them into a plastic sleeve marked finalized. The sound of the binder clip snapping shut felt like punctuation at the end of a very long sentence. Leah leaned back in her chair. You could have destroyed them, Dana. Publicly. You had all the proof. The recordings, the paperwork, the hypocrisy. But instead, you just made them sign something and walk out with a check. I didn't need to destroy them, I said. I just needed them to know they're not the ones who get the last word anymore. She nodded slowly. That's not revenge. That's discipline. Exactly, I said. Justice isn't chaos, it's controlled detonation. Leah laughed softly. God, you sound like you're still briefing a platoon. I smiled. The first real one in months. Maybe I am. When she left, the apartment felt different. Not lighter, just quieter in a way that didn't hurt. I turned off the recorder, filed the audio clip in my encrypted drive, and wrote a new entry in Operation Ledger. Entry 8 amperes confession secured. Statement verified. Verbal acknowledgement of prioritizing wedding expenses over life-saving surgery. Emotional breakdown observed. Signatures obtained. Status. Resolved. I typed those words slowly, one line at a time, as if my fingers needed to understand what my brain already knew. That closure wasn't something you found, it was something you built. That night, I poured a glass of wine and opened the folder one last time. Every page told a different story: greed, vanity, neglect, and the quiet heroism of surviving all three. I read the confession transcript again. My father's voice was low and trembling. My mother's sobs filled the background. Somewhere in between, I heard my own voice, steady, calm, unshakable. The next morning, I printed a copy of the signed agreement and mailed it to my lawyer, just in case. The post office clerk glanced at the envelope and said, "Certified?" "Always," I said. On the drive back, I stopped at the cemetery. The ground was still damp from last night's rain, and the grass around Noah's headstone was overgrown again. The maintenance crew never did much out here, but I didn't mind. It made the place feel honest. I sat cross-legged on the grass and told him about the meeting. I didn't yell, I said. Didn't even raise my voice. You'd have liked that part. You always said people listen better when I talk quiet. The wind moved through the trees, slow and warm. I took it as a nod. I made them say it, kiddo, I said. All of it, no excuses left. I paused, looking at the dates carved in stone. I thought hearing it would make me feel better. It didn't. It just made it real. I traced the letters of his name with my finger, but I think that's enough. On my way back to the car, my phone buzzed Leah again. "You okay?" I texted back, "I'm not sure, but I'm steady." That night, I slept like a person who no longer had to rehearse imaginary arguments in her head. No more what-ifs, no more rewinding conversations that could have saved him. Just the simple, heavy quiet of truth. Days passed. I went back to work, back to lesson plans, back to the small rituals that make a life feel like it's still moving forward. No one at school knew anything except that I'd been dealing with family stuff. I let them think that. The truth didn't belong in the staff lounge. Then, one afternoon, I got a call from my father again. I almost didn't answer, but curiosity won. "Dana," he said, "we signed your agreement, but your mother's been unwell. The stress, the medication, the press coverage. It's been too much." I said nothing. "She keeps saying we deserve this," he continued. "She can't sleep. She cries all the time. You made your point. Maybe you can forgive us now." "Forgive you?" I repeated. "For what exactly?" "For being human," he said. I almost laughed. "You mistake selfishness for humanity. Big difference." He sighed. "You've changed." "Good," I said and hung up. I sat there for a while, staring at the wall. He was right, though I had changed. The Dana who begged for help had been softer, naive enough to believe blood meant something sacred. That version of me died the same day Noah did. The woman sitting here now wasn't broken. She was forged. That night, I opened my laptop again and started drafting an article. Not for publication, not yet just for myself. Title: Justice Over Blood. It wasn't a memoir, more like a case study in family failure and personal accountability. I wrote about the cost of loyalty, the dangers of blind trust, and the myth that forgiveness is mandatory. By midnight, I had 3,000 words. By 2 a.m., I had a beginning I actually liked. People think betrayal feels like fire. It doesn't. Fire burns quick. Betrayal freezes, it traps you until you stop fighting. I stopped there. Sometimes the best thing you can do for a story is leave space for silence. When dawn came, I brewed coffee, the same bitter brand I'd been buying since deployment. I stood at the window watching the sun hit the street, warm and ordinary. For once, nothing in me itched to move or fix or fight. Later that week, Leah stopped by again. "You're quieter," she said. "Quieter's not always bad," I said. She nodded. "So what now?" "Now I let the truth do what truth does," I said. "It spreads." She grinned. "You planning to help it along?" "Maybe," I said. "Maybe not." She tilted her head. "You're dangerous when you sound peaceful." "I know." That night, I went through the operation ledger one last time, not to add anything, but to close it properly. I sealed it in a manila envelope, wrote Archive across the front, and tucked it into my filing cabinet under N. I didn't plan to touch it again, but I wanted to know where it was in case life ever forgot what it owed me. Then I sat back on the couch, took a slow sip of wine, and looked at the empty space across the room where Noah's toys used to be. I didn't cry this time. I just sat there, breathing like I'd finally learned how. When I turned off the light, the apartment stayed quiet. No ghosts, no echoes, just the steady sound of my own heartbeat, finally keeping its own time. The next morning started like any other quiet, deliberate, and deceptively ordinary. The only difference was the envelope sitting on my desk, marked Family Disclosure Confidential. I'd written that label weeks ago, but never had the nerve to send it. Now it didn't feel like nerves. It felt like timing. I poured coffee, black and bitter, and stared at that envelope for a long time. Inside were copies of everything. Their confessions, the receipts, screenshots, the signed no-contact agreement, the picture of Noah in his hospital bed, and the one of Sophie smiling at her $320,000 wedding. 2 worlds printed on the same paper. Leah's words from our last conversation replayed in my head. You could destroy them publicly. I hadn't wanted to before, but the more I thought about my father calling me to ask for forgiveness for being human, the more it sounded like he still believed there were no consequences. People like him lived their whole lives thinking redemption was just one apology away. I decided it was time to teach him what accountability really felt like. I opened my laptop and drafted a message to my Aunt Alice, the same one who'd warned me when my parents lost everything. The subject line read, "You should know the truth." I kept it simple. Aunt Alice, I'm sending this because the family deserves honesty. The documents inside explain everything that happened, how my parents had $320 kelvins for a wedding, but wouldn't give $65 kelvins to save their grandson's life. I'm done keeping their secrets. Dana? I sealed the envelope, slipped it into a larger package, and wrote her address in clean military block letters. I knew her well enough to know what would happen next. She'd share it, email it, forward it, post it, probably with a caption like, "Families aren't always what they seem." By noon, I'd dropped the package in the post office box and gone for a long drive. The highway stretched flat and gray through Ohio farmland, the kind of road where your thoughts get louder because there's nothing else around to muffle them. I didn't feel guilt, just a strange calm. I wasn't exposing them out of hate. I was just shining a light on what was already there. When I got home, I opened my email again. I wrote another message, this time to an old acquaintance from the local paper, a woman named Carol, who used to cover community stories back when my father's company sponsored every 5 kelvins in the city. Subject line, story tip, the Monroe family. I didn't need to attach the documents yet. I just wrote, if you're interested in a story about how philanthropy looks different behind closed doors, call me. I didn't expect a reply right away, but she called within an hour. Dana Monroe? As in Gregory Monroe's daughter? That's right, I said. She hesitated. He used to donate to our paper's scholarship fund. Yeah, I said. Maybe you'll want to hear how he funded that. By evening, I'd sent her everything. She promised to verify before publishing, but I knew the facts would hold. Numbers don't lie, they just wait for someone brave enough to read them aloud. The next few days moved fast. Aunt Alice called first, her voice a mix of shock and heartbreak. Dana, I had no idea. Everyone's talking. Your mother called me hysterical. She'll live, I said. You didn't have to do it like this, she whispered. Didn't I? I asked. Because private apologies didn't mean anything to them. Maybe public shame will. She sighed. You're not wrong, but this will tear the family apart. It was already broken, I said and hung up. 2 days later, the article went live. Headline, Local Family's Lavish Wedding Overshadowed by Refusal to Save Grandchild's Life. My parents' photo was front and center, smiling at Sophie's wedding, champagne in hand. The contrast was brutal, but fair. The story quoted documents I'd provided, redacted names where necessary. Carol had done her job. She didn't sensationalize it. She just told the truth. The reaction was immediate. Their country club membership was suspended, pending review. The church board issued a statement about moral accountability. My father's old coworkers flooded the comments section, pretending they were shocked when I knew they weren't. Social media did what it always does, amplified everything. Leah called that evening. You really did it, she said. You detonated the bomb. It was never a bomb, I said. More like a mirror. She laughed. You really have a talent for poetic revenge. It's not revenge, I said. It's maintenance. Mike. 3 days after that, I got an email from my father. The subject line was one word: please. I opened it. Dana, your mother hasn't left the house in days. People we've known for 30 years won't return our calls. You've made your point. We're ruined. If there's any compassion left in you, stop this. We've lost everything. Dad, I didn't reply. Instead, I forwarded the email to myself, then filed it in Operation Ledger under Aftermath. Documentation mattered, even now. Especially now. Later that night, I scrolled through the comment section under the article. People argued about morality, family, religion, forgiveness. One person wrote, "If she was my daughter, I'd disown her." Another replied, "They already did." That made me laugh, a sharp, humorless sound that still felt good. The following morning, I stopped by the grocery store. The cashier, a woman who'd been friendly for years, gave me a cautious look. "You. That Monroe girl?" "Used to be," I said. She nodded. "Good for you." It was such a simple phrase, but it landed heavy. Not approval, not sympathy, just recognition. Like she knew what it meant to stop being quiet. Back home, I brewed another pot of coffee and sat by the window. The news cycle would move on eventually. The scandal would fade, new gossip would replace it. But for once, I didn't care about time. The truth had been told. That was permanent enough. Around sunset, Leah came by with takeout. "So," she said, handing me a box of fried rice, "how does victory taste?" I smirked. "Like MSG and freedom." She laughed. "And how do they taste?" "Like consequences," I said. We ate quietly for a while, the TV on low in the background. Some commercial about family vacations played a father lifting his kid into the air as the narrator said, "Because family is everything." I couldn't help but snort. Leah shook her head. "You really don't believe in that anymore, huh?" "I believe in earned family," I said. "The kind that stays when things get hard." She nodded. "That's rare." "So am I said. When she left, I sat in the dim light for a long time, letting the silence settle again. No guilt, no gloating, just a strange, even calm. The kind soldiers feel when a mission's complete, not joy, not sadness, just the quiet understanding that something irreversible has been done. I took the last sip of cold coffee and looked at the folder on my desk. Operation Ledger, worn at the edges but intact. I picked up a pen and wrote one last line under the final entry. Outcome: exposure achieved, truth established, collateral damage acceptable. Then I closed it. The metal clip clicked shut, sharp and final. Outside, the streetlights flickered on one by one, painting the neighborhood in dull yellow. Somewhere in that same city, my parents were sitting in the dark too, facing the same silence, only heavier. The balance was restored. Not perfectly, but enough to live with. I didn't check the news for a week after the story broke. It wasn't avoidance. It was control. The kind I'd learned from years of being in uniform, where sometimes silence was a weapon sharper than anything you could fire. By the time I finally opened my laptop again, the world had already moved on to fresher scandals. But the damage was done. My parents' faces still hovered in search results, frozen mid-smile in a headline about hypocrisy. Their friends had either ghosted them or pretended they'd always known something was off. It was strange, watching justice unfold without lifting another finger. No screaming, no courtroom, no police reports. Just truth, doing its slow, methodical work. Leah came over one evening with a six-pack and the look of someone who'd just watched a controlled burn. "You know," she said, cracking open a beer, "you pulled off something most people only fantasize about. You burned them down without breaking the law or raising your voice." "I didn't burn them," I said. "I just stopped shielding them from the fire they started." She grinned. "Same thing, just better phrasing." I took a sip of beer, the bitterness grounding me. They thought silence was protection. It was really just a delay. Leah nodded. "So what now? You gonna rebuild ties or let it rot?" "I'm not rebuilding anything," I said. "Some things shouldn't be repaired." A week later, I got a letter in the mail. Handwritten, shaky, no return address, but I knew the handwriting. My mother's cursive, the kind she used on thank you cards and holiday envelopes. I opened it at the counter, half expecting some final plea. Instead, it was short. "Dana, I don't expect forgiveness. But I want you to know I've thought about everything you said. You were right, we made choices that can't be undone. Your father isn't the same. I'm not either. I hope you find peace. Mom. There was no manipulation in it. No subtle guilt trip or moral lecture, just words that sounded like they came from someone who'd finally stopped performing. I folded the letter neatly and slid it into the back of Operation Ledger. Not as evidence this time, but as record. Proof that maybe, in their own way, they'd finally learned what consequences felt like. At work, life went on. Parents still emailed about grades, kids still forgot homework, and the coffee machine still broke every Thursday. But people looked at me differently now. Not because of what they knew they didn't know anything, but because I carried myself differently. Lighter, in a way that had nothing to do with happiness. One afternoon, a student named Alex stayed after class. "Miss Monroe," he said, "my mom says some people never change. Do you think that's true?" I thought about it for a moment. "No," I said. "I think most people change. The question is whether they do it before or after they cause damage." He nodded like that made sense, even if he didn't fully get it yet. Kids rarely do, but sometimes they remember the tone. That night, I sat at the window again, watching the world outside my apartment hum along. The streetlights, the cars, the couples walking their dogs, it all looked so ordinary. And maybe that's what peace really is. Not the absence of pain, but the acceptance that life keeps moving with or without your permission. I thought about Noah, about what he might have looked like now 12 years old, tall, probably into video games or baseball. I'd stopped trying to imagine his voice years ago because every time I did, it came out sounding like goodbye. But in that moment, I didn't need to hear him. I just needed to remember he existed. The world might forget him, but I never would. And that was enough. Later, when I finally turned off the lights, I caught a glimpse of my reflection in the window, older, calmer, but still me, the soldier, the mother, the woman who learned that justice doesn't always come with applause. The next morning, I went for a run around the block. The air was sharp, cold enough to sting my lungs. At one corner, I passed a family setting up a garage sale. A little boy, maybe 8 or 9, was helping his dad line up toys on a folding table. He waved when I jogged by. I waved back, and for a second it hit me how different everything could have been, but instead of breaking me, it steadied me. I wasn't a victim anymore. I was the person who had survived what others couldn't live with. That afternoon, Leah dropped by again. "You ever think about writing all this down?" she asked. "I already did," I said. "Just not for public eyes." She smirked. "You could turn it into a book. Call it Family Values, my ass." I laughed for the first time that week. "Tempting," I said. "But some stories are meant to stay scars, not headlines." We ordered pizza, and she stayed until the sun went down. When she left, she paused at the door. "You know," she said, "you never got revenge. You got justice. There's a difference." "Yeah," I said. "Revenge feels good for a minute. Justice lasts." After she was gone, I cleaned the table, washed the dishes, and tucked Operation Ledger back into the drawer. For the first time since I'd started keeping it, I didn't feel the need to update it. There was nothing left to add. Before bed, I lit a candle by the photo of Noah on the shelf. It wasn't some spiritual ritual, just a habit. The small flame flickered against the glass, reflecting 2 faces. His and mine. "I kept my promise, kiddo," I said quietly. "They'll never forget you now." The room was silent except for the sound of the candle's soft hiss. I didn't feel triumphant. I didn't feel broken. Just even balanced. Like the scales had finally stopped tipping in someone else's favor. I blew out the candle, the smoke curling upward like a sigh that didn't need to be explained. Then I went to bed. No nightmares waiting, no ghosts knocking, just the steady rhythm of breath and a heartbeat that finally belonged only to me. Spring came slower that year, like the weather didn't quite know how to start over either. The snow melted into gray puddles, the kind that left stains on your shoes no matter how careful you walked. I didn't mind. I was done worrying about what stayed clean. I'd been promoted that month, officially principal now. It wasn't some grand ceremony, just a short announcement at a staff meeting followed by polite applause. When the superintendent shook my hand, he said, "You've earned this, Miss Monroe. Stability suits you." I almost laughed. Stability was a luxury I'd only recently learned how to afford. The job kept me busy, which was good. It kept my thoughts structured, like rows of lockers, neat, predictable, labeled. Between lesson plans and budget meetings, I didn't have much time to think about the past. But grief has a way of living in the corners of quiet moments, waiting for a pause. One Friday afternoon, I stayed late to finish paperwork. The halls were empty, lights humming overhead. I looked up and saw one of my students, Alex, the same kid who'd asked if people could really change standing by my office door. "Did you need something?" I asked. He shrugged, fidgeting with the strap of his backpack. "My mom was supposed to pick me up, but she's running late. Can I wait here?" "Of course," I said, motioning to the chair across from me. He sat down, quiet for a moment. Then, out of nowhere, he said, "I read that article about you, the one about your family." My pen froze midair. "Where'd you see that?" "My aunt sent it to my mom," he said. "She said you were brave. I think so too." I leaned back, unsure what to say. "Bravery's just doing what you have to when no one else will." He nodded. "My dad left when I was 5. Everyone said it wasn't my fault, but it still felt like it." I met his eyes. "It's never the kid's fault. Ever." He smiled a little. "That's what my mom says too." We sat there in silence for a bit, the kind that didn't feel awkward. When his mom finally pulled up, he grabbed his bag, turned back and said, "You're a good person, Miss Monroe. My mom says sometimes good people have to do hard things." "Your mom sounds smart," I said. He grinned. "She watches a lot of crime shows." After he left, I sat at my desk for a while, staring at the papers I wasn't really reading. Hard things. That's what the whole last decade had been. But hearing it said out loud by a kid who didn't know how much that sentence weighed, it settled something inside me. That weekend, I drove to the small-town cemetery again. The grass was green now, the headstones dotted with wildflowers that had managed to grow through neglect. I'd brought a new plaque for Noah, simple, bronze, nothing fancy. It just said, "Noah Monroe, loved beyond measure." I knelt down to set it in place. "I got promoted, kiddo," I said quietly. "Guess I finally figured out what I'm doing." A breeze rustled through the trees. I took that as an answer. I stayed there a long time, longer than I planned, watching the sunlight fade behind the trees. There were no tears this time, just a strange peace. It felt less like closure, and more like alignment, like the world had finally rotated back to its right position. On my drive home, I passed by my parents' neighborhood. Not on purpose, it was just the fastest route. Their house looked different now. The yard was unkempt, the paint fading, curtains drawn even in daylight. I didn't slow down, but I noticed the "for sale" sign leaning slightly in the front yard. I wondered if they'd moved out already, or if they were just pretending not to be home. I didn't feel satisfaction, just confirmation. They'd chosen their path, I'd chosen mine. We were both living with the results. When I got home, Leah was already sitting on my porch, holding a bottle of whiskey like an offering. "Promotion calls for a drink," she said. "You could have texted," I said. "I like dramatic entrances," she replied. We sat outside, passing the bottle back and forth, the night quiet except for the hum of distant traffic. "So," she said, "you ever think about reconnecting? With them, I mean." I shook my head. "There's nothing left to reconnect to. I buried that with Noah." "Oh?" She nodded, not pushing. "Then what now?" "I keep living," I said simply. "That's the only revenge that really lasts." She smiled. "You sound like someone who finally made peace with her story." "Maybe I did," I said. "Or maybe I just stopped needing to explain it." We drank until the bottle was light and the air smelled like rain again. Before she left, Leah said, "You know, you didn't destroy them. You just reminded the world they weren't saints." 1. "I didn't need the world to know," I said. "I just needed them to." She hugged me tight, then drove off. I sat there for a while, listening to the distant rumble of thunder. For the first time in a long time, it didn't sound like warning. It sounded like renewal. The next morning, I packed up a few of Noah's things, a small model airplane, his favorite science book, the little army cap he used to wear when he'd play Soldier Like Mom. I drove 2 hours to a state park near the lake, one he'd loved visiting. I found a quiet spot under a tree and started digging a small hole. I buried the items there carefully, one by one. not as an act of letting go, but as a promise. A reminder that his life still had roots in this world. When I finished, I sat there with my hands in the dirt, eyes closed, breathing in the smell of wet soil and pine. Somewhere above, a hawk circled, crying once before, disappearing into the sky. I smiled faintly. Message received, I said. Back at home that evening, I opened my laptop and started a new document. The title came to me instantly, The Price of Family Revenge. I didn't write it like a confession or a memoir. I wrote it like a report, a debriefing. Clean, honest, complete. I didn't plan to publish it, but I wanted it written down, somewhere, for whoever might need to know someday that justice isn't always loud, and closure doesn't always mean forgiveness. By midnight, I'd finished the first page. It ended with a single line. In the end, I didn't win. I didn't lose either. I just stopped bleeding. I leaned back, read it twice, and closed the laptop. No need to edit it. Some truths don't need polishing. The city was quiet outside, the kind of stillness that doesn't last long but feels infinite while it's there. I turned off the lights, lay in bed, and thought about the strange math of my life, how loss and justice had somehow balanced each other out. The world hadn't given me closure, so I built it myself, piece by piece, choice by choice. And somewhere along the way, I stopped living in the shadow of what they'd done and started walking in the light of what I'd survived. When sleep finally came, it wasn't haunted. It was simple. It was mine.